This is a good point to pause and consider several common notation practices in regards to both pitch and duration. Note heads have an oval shape. This allows them to fit nicely in between the lines of a staff. A circle would stick out above the lines. Ideally, the double whole note note head and whole note note head are slightly larger than the half note note head, and the half note note head is slightly larger than the quarter note note head. The double whole and whole note note heads do not tilt. The note head for the half note and all smaller note values is slightly tilted. This tilt leans to the right. To draw a note head, begin at the lowest left-hand corner and use a smooth clockwise motion. To make a quarter note or smaller note head, start at a point between two staff lines and, with a clockwise spiral motion, gradually fill in the space until the note head just touches the staff lines above and below. Replicate these motions for writing note heads on a staff line. Stems should be 1 octave in length, which is approximately 3 spaces on the staff. Notes below the center line of the staff require an upstem. An upstem is placed to the right of the note head and just touches where the upward tilt is. Notes above the center line require a downstem. A downstem is placed to the left of the note head and just touches where the downward tilt begins. Notes on the center line may have upstems or downstems, depending on the notes immediately around them. Use the musical context to determine which way the stem should point. However, if the musical context is not a factor, then write a downstem. Dots are placed to the right of the note head, regardless of whether it has an upstem or a downstem. Dots are always placed in between the lines of the staff, regardless of whether the note head is on a line or space. Ledger lines should be twice the width of the note head and should have the same amount of vertical space between them as the lines on the staff. The addition of ledger lines alters the previous 1 octave stem rule. Once you start getting higher or lower than the staff using ledger lines, the note heads tend to look like they're floating off into space. We anchor note heads written above or below the staff by extending the stem to the center line of the staff, regardless of whether they have an upstem or a downstem. Note that rests are never written using ledger lines. They are always on the staff. Ties are always written close to the note heads, but without touching them. Connect the note heads to one another, not the stems. A tie should be gently curved and have an asymmetrical arch. If the two notes have stems, the tie is placed opposite to the stems. For a series of tied notes, each one must be connected to its neighbor. Double whole rests are drawn in the 3rd space. Whole rests hang down below the 4th line. Half rests sit on top of the middle line. Double whole, whole, and half rests are always placed in the center of the measure. The quarter rest may be the trickiest of all to write properly. They should be placed in the middle of the staff vertically and in an upright position. There are 2 basic components, a number 2 and a letter C. An 8th rest has 2 basic components, a dot with an upward swoop and an angled line. The shorter the rest, the longer the angled line needs to be to accommodate additional swoops. Carefully practice your music notation skills using the above common practices as guidelines.